All right, everyone, welcome to the PICS annual forum. I'm Greg Wheeler. I'm the Paediatric Radiation Oncologist at Peter Mac, head of the PEDS tumour stream at the VCCC, and I'm here because I'm the Medical Director of PICS. This is our second COVID lockdown virtual forum, and I'd like to commend all the team for all their work they've done during the last couple of years of lockdown, and in particular, Justine, who leads a very good crew and has managed to achieve a lot despite all the lockdowns that we've had. Before I start, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land of which we meet and pay our respects to their elders past and present, the Wurundjeri people, and of course, the people wherever you may be watching this from. I extend that respect to the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people here today watching. This is our second annual forum presented virtually because of COVID. And in doing so, I'd like to welcome the CEOs from our main health organisations. To Bernadette McDonald, this is her first forum as the CEO of the Royal Children's Hospital, Shelley Dolan at Peter MacCallum, and Andrew Stripp at Monash Medical Centre. And of course, everyone from our regional partners, our Department of Health representatives and members of the PICS community. Also, we wouldn't be here without all our medical, nursing and allied health team members who support PICS and actually do the work that we're here to support in terms of cancer treatment improvement for children. The theme of this year's annual forum is consumer engagement in paediatric cancer. And so we welcome all the parents and young people from our consumer working groups and those consumers who participated in the work that PICS has done over the last year, which I'm sure we'll hear something about. This year, like last year, was one that we didn't picture happening in Victoria due to COVID, and we acknowledge all the hard work of all the team members, ward staff, support staff, who continue to go above and beyond to provide fantastic healthcare and support to our PICS work despite the challenges. There have been changes to the PICS Governance Committee, namely that John Stanway has retired as the CEO of the Royal Children's Hospital and as the PICS Chair, and we'd like to thank John and acknowledge him for his support and leadership during the last few years, which has been invaluable as PICS Chair, and wish him well with retirement and hope that he has a lot of fun. We'd also like to thank Associate Professor Ed Oakley for stepping into the role of the PICS Chair in the interim. And as mentioned, we welcome Bernadette McDonald, the new CEO from the Children's and the current PICS Chair. I'd like now to hand over to the person who does all the hard work in PICS, Justine Cardner, our manager.
Thanks, Greg. Yes, thank you for the introduction. Welcome everyone here today. I've now been in the Programme Manager role for almost 2 years, and when I joined in November 2019, I'm pretty sure that I wasn't expecting to only be in the office with the PICS team for 9 of the next 24 months. In that time, we've welcomed many new members of the PICS and long-term follow-up teams, and I'm incredibly proud of the work they've all collectively achieved over the last 2 years. I'm especially grateful and have been very humbled by the response and support we've received from many parents and young people over the last 12 months who've been willing to give up their time, their energy, and in some cases reliving really difficult experiences in their lives in order to help the next families who will be going through a cancer journey with their child. Today's theme of consumer engagement reflects the huge contribution that these families have made and the incredible wealth of ideas and solutions that have been gifted to PICS through their stories. We're taking these contributions very seriously, and we're utilising them in multiple projects that have been completed and are commencing at the moment over the last 12 months. We have completed a review of the long-term follow-up programme and are planning the improvement work recommended in our final report. We've continued the development of the Paediatric Oncology Quality Monitoring Indicators. We've commenced projects designed to support families in taking medication at home, an Eating Well nutritional project, and we're also commencing a day oncology flow and capacity project at Monash Children's Cancer Centre. We have developed medical education models for emergency physicians and GPs entitled Is It Cancer? A module now available in the Australian College of Emergency Medicine and the Royal Children's Hospital GP Education Learning Hubs. We've updated clinical resources for feeding neutropenia and physical activity in childhood cancer. We've created new chemotherapy fact sheets, which are resources for parents, and we've translated 49 of these into languages other than English, so into Arabic, Dari, Simplified Chinese and Vietnamese. And this is really the beginning of a program of PICS work to make sure that our resources are accessible to the whole population of families who need them. We have partnered with OnTrack, the Adolescent and Young Adult Cancer Service, to develop an optimal care pathway for adolescents and young adults, which will shortly be launched for public consultation. And many of these projects included consumers as part of the working groups and steering committees. So I'd now like to introduce a key piece of engagement work that PICS has been working on, developing the PICS Consumer Engagement Framework.
At PICS, we recognise that if we bring the consumer voice to our service improvement projects, the projects are more likely going to be more successful and result in better patient outcomes. We started to realise that we needed a guide as to how we could better engage with our consumers. Service improvement leads such as myself had questions like, would our consumers be open to co-designing a resource or a project? Does the type of engagement depend on where they are in the cancer journey? And how would our approach be different when we're engaging with children or young people? We felt that a framework would provide some clarity to questions like these and help the PICS staff engage with our consumers more confidently, knowing that we're engaging with them in a way that's acceptable, supportive and purposeful. And we felt that such a framework would be good to share with our consumers so they could understand how they could work with us in a meaningful way. Our consumers are unique in that they include the children or young people receiving treatment, as well as their families or carers. They're also geographically diverse, as PICS is a statewide program. PICS were committed to creating a consumer participation framework with their consumers. So we sent the word out and recruited a group of consumers to see how they thought this co-creation of a framework could happen. And it turns out that this particular group was willing to be part of the co-creation process, and so a number of working meetings followed to tease out the principles that resonated most with them and to identify how these principles could play out in practice. And these two elements of principles and practice make up our consumer participation framework. The first principle is value of the lived experience. Now, this one's about ensuring that this lived experience is carefully considered in each of our service improvement projects, and it recognises that there's variation in consumers' experiences and views arising from their treatment. The second one, collaboration, cements consumers and consumer groups as stakeholders that we would routinely collaborate with for service improvement, like we do with clinicians. Collaboration with clinicians is also required to ensure that engagement with consumers is seamless and appropriate. Then there's embracing diversity and expertise. This one recognises that each consumer has something to bring to the table, and this expertise could be derived from their jobs, their hobbies, or culture. It's also about taking measures to capture that diversity. Then there's enabling and supporting participation. This one's about ensuring that the participation is accessible and that it's sensitive to where a consumer might be in their cancer journey. It also ensures that participation is meaningful for consumers, ensuring that their contribution is optimised through support. Indicators of success with this framework are: 1, consumers feel supported when they participate in our projects and that they understand what to expect when they engage with PICS and how they can make a meaningful contribution. 2, the lived experience of consumers reflects diversity and includes the voice of young people. 3, that there's clear benefit for consumers participating. And 4, for the PICS staff feeling more confident in engaging with consumers for their projects. And the plan would be to revisit these factors after a given time to see how we're tracking, if there's anything we need to change or if there are any tools that we need to develop to complement the framework. Now, each time a project is planned at PICS, there's a prompt for us to ensure that participation of consumers is carefully considered throughout the project in our project planning template, and that way it is truly embedded in our practice.
I believe PICS work is not only the patient or that they're treating, but also the family and people surrounding that patient to give them the best sort of experience they can through a very challenging time.
I think being involved as a consumer is pivotal, and it's great if you can get more people involved, obviously, because we all have different preferences and experiences, but dealing with childhood cancer is awful, revolting, hard, tough, all of those sorts of words. So anything that makes it easier to access services is worthwhile.
That we heard, and I think I mentioned that in some of the workshops, it was just, I certainly felt valued, and I felt like my contribution and my experience and our family's experience was welcomed and listened to, our points of view were listened to. So yeah, I think it's that thing about feeling valued.
It means that there's less stresses and pressures on not only families but patients, as we've sort of got a hand to hold us through the whole journey, and sort of nothing that comes out of the blue or could take us by surprise. I feel like being involved our patient's point of view and sort of how the service is best being executed from a patient point of view, rather than the parents or doctors sort of see what I'm getting out of it, or what patients are sort of getting out of everything that's being done to help us.
The reason we got involved as a PICS consumer is, I guess, we feel quite fortunate that our daughter is now in remission, and we would like to be able to give back to the cancer community, or, you know, other people that are still doing it tough. And one way that we can do that is by participating in things like this.
Because I like the idea of working on something, and I like the idea of working on something collaboratively. So listening to other people's experiences, so other consumers' experiences, but also working with the professionals. And I really enjoyed nutting it out together, and particularly doing it. I know this probably doesn't sound, but I didn't mind doing it online. I thought it was a really effective and efficient way of doing it, allowed people to speak with, because sometimes it can be a bit difficult in a roundtable kind of organisation or setup. Yeah, and you know, we went through that cancer journey with our child.
Yeah.
It was my way of sort of feeling like saying thank you, I guess, as well. Yeah. I think just keeping us abreast of what's going on, and I know it's time consuming for you guys, but it's really nice from my perspective as a consumer, and I think others, just to know what's going on and to be invited along. And I think that, again, credit to your team, because I never ever felt pressure to do anything. If I couldn't do it or I couldn't proofread it, there was never any pressure. So I would like to continue to be involved in that sort of capacity. So let us know how you're going. Maybe let us, you know, it might be a question about, we're 6 months down the track, what do you think? Do you think we're travelling well? So just because sometimes you get involved in these things and there's no follow-up, and you feel a little bit, like, well, what happened as a result? So it'd be nice to know that something has come out of it.
Continue to be transparent in all that happens, and sort of ensuring that consumers or patients or families sort of know exactly what's going to happen, know what steps are being taken or why it's being taken, and if they can continue doing that, it'll make the service, continue to make the service such an enjoyable experience.
A huge thank you to all of the parents and young people who contributed to this piece of work. It has already been and will continue to be a core element of how PICS approaches improvement projects in the future. The next project we'll be highlighting today is the service review of the long-term follow-up programme, which is the statewide paediatric oncology survivorship programme. I'm very excited to see the recommendations from this review come to fruition. So now we'll hear from Hannah, who led the review work.
The long-term follow-up
programme has been providing tailored and multidisciplinary care to childhood cancer survivors across Victoria for over a decade now. Patients are usually referred to us 2 to 3 years for completion of treatment, and we provide care and support for their health and wellbeing needs as a result of late effects from their cancer diagnosis and treatment. So as you can imagine, the programme has evolved and changed a lot over the 10 years since it began, and we've actually just recently accepted patient number 2000, so that is very exciting. But obviously we felt there was need for a review and to really understand how the programme works and what the patients and families experience when they come to see us. The review commenced in April 2020 and had lots of different elements to it, but essentially we did a lot of internal service activity and demand mapping. We spoke with a lot of healthcare professionals who interact with the programme. We spoke with patients and their families, and we also had a workshop with GPs and paediatricians, and also got an international perspective from a subject matter expert overseas as well. And essentially we've pulled all this feedback together and analysed it to support the aim of the review, which was to develop recommendations of a best practice model of long-term follow-up care. We wanted patients and families to be as involved in this project as possible, to really help sort of set the direction and to shape and improve the long-term follow-up programme. So we did this in a couple of ways. Initially, we sent out a patient experience survey to families who had attended within the last 2 years, and we received over 100 responses and an absolute wealth of information. So that was really valuable. But we also facilitated a workshop, and that I think it was 9 parents and 1 young person joined us for that, and that was probably the highlight, one of the highlights of the project. It generated a lot of discussion. We had plenty of time, and we talked lots of things through, but also it generated lots of really fantastic ideas. So those were the main components of consumer engagement, but there were also other opportunities to be involved. We had a parent and a couple of young people on our steering committee and working groups, which was fantastic as we sort of worked through developing these recommendations. We also had a couple of opportunities to review some resources that we were developing. So, for example, a video about what to expect when to come to an appointment, and also some visual resources about the programme itself and the pathway into and out of the long-term follow-up programme. So that was really helpful as well. So as we've pulled all this huge wealth of information together, what's become clear is that the long-term follow-up programme is greatly valued by patients and families, and it's a really unique and important service during the survivorship phase of the cancer care continuum. In summary, the review resulted in a total of 37 recommendations for improvement, and across lots of different areas of the programme. What we found was that the current risk stratified multidisciplinary model of care is aligned with best practice for this cohort of patients. So a lot of the recommendations revolve around other areas such as administration of the programme, education, resources, data collection, research, psychosocial care and support, a bit of a focus on transition, and also about exploring opportunities for shared care closer to home. So lots of different areas of work, but all very exciting, and we're looking forward to moving to the next stage. In terms of what's next for the project, we will be disseminating the recommendations report and now moving to the implementation phase. So we'll be spending some time planning exactly how we're going to do this. So there'll be an implementation and an engagement plan, and we need to identify the resources required to actually deliver on these recommendations. There'll be some
really, small, quick wins and some really large service improvement projects. So lots to get on with. But importantly, we'll continue to monitor and report against our progress. And I think it's a really good point to mention here that we didn't really have a set agenda for this project in terms of the direction that it would take. We really wanted stakeholders, and especially families and parents, to really set the course of the project, and I feel that has been the case. So what we'll continue to do is work alongside patients and families for the long-term follow-up programme in implementing these recommendations and ultimately delivering a best practice model of long-term follow-up care across Victoria.
Thank you, Hannah, for a brilliant summary of a huge piece of work that's actually been running since March last year. So we're thrilled to get to the summation of that project, and as I say, very excited to start implementing some of those recommendations for future change. I'd just like to finish by introducing our video version of our annual report. As we did last year, we have two formats. So we'll have the document report, which we will provide onto our website very shortly. But just to provide you with a bit of a year in review summary of all of the work that PICS has done over the last 12 months. Excellent, thank you. And finally, I would like to confirm that PICS are very excited to be a member of the newly formed Victorian Paediatric Cancer Collaborative, an entity focusing on the advancement of clinical research in childhood cancer, supported by a grant from the Medicines Research Futures Fund. PICS will be updating and completely redesigning, our cancer survivorship database in support of paediatric cancer research for the state. I'll now hand over to Greg.
Thanks, Justine. And there are a couple more very exciting things coming through the pipeline that we'll be able to share with you this time next year. A couple of good announcements that are embargoed at the moment, so we look forward to presenting that. I'd like to thank everyone who presented today and was involved in creating the annual report. Again, it was a stunning piece of work. I'd like to thank everyone who's worked with or for PICS, all the frontline staff. And in reflecting on that, looking at the attendance list, it's lovely to see two of our past PICS managers in the audience. So Jane and Amy, lovely to have them still keeping in touch with the legacy of their work. So welcome to you two. I'd like to also thank all our patients and families, not only which is the reason why we're there to do the work, but also for, as you saw, their invaluable feedback. And finally, the core PICS team led by Justine. I said at the beginning, she does an awesome job leading a fantastic team through very difficult circumstances the last couple of years. And I think the annual report in today's presentation is just the tip of the iceberg of the sort of work that we've come to expect from them. So with that, I will give everyone their Tuesday night back. Thank you very much for attending, and we look forward to seeing you during the year, and if not, this time next year at the PICS Annual Forum 2022.